Welcome to Three Witches and a Druid podcast, a Canadian podcast about paganism in today's modern society. And now, Three Witches and a Druid podcast present The Bard Dom.
Feel the winds of change blow around your head, and slowly they disappear, leaving a single thread. You walk along this road to see where it leads, to trouble or a bright new day. The future is there to take. Spread your wings and live your life. Can you hear me? Set your spirit free and live your life. Can you hear me? Calling your name. Na 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 na, na 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 na, na 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 na, na na na. The mists of time, they cloud your view with one breath of life. You can see where the path leads you. You walk along this road to see what you find. Those burdens on your back aren't yours. You can leave them all behind. Spread your wings and live your life. Can you hear me? Set your spirit free and live your life. Can you hear me? Calling your name. Na 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 na, na 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 na. Voice inside of your head is the spirit of the land. So come and walk the ancient ways. Reach out and take my hand. You walked this path before, but you never felt it so strong. So let your heart be free. Right here is where you belong. Spread your wings and live your life. Can you hear me? Set your spirit free and live your life. Can you hear me? Calling your name. Na 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 na, na 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 na.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Three Witches and a Druid. We are here at our 50th episode, if you could believe that. That's so crazy.
It's amazing.
Sitting around drinking our Eventide mead. The topic this episode is the direction of east and the element of air. My name is Margot.
And I'm Maeve.
Gwen.
And I'm Brian. So yeah, this is part 2 of our 4 parts on the elements in witchcraft and paganism in general. Yeah, so we just ate some key lime pie, which had some fluffy whipped cream on top for air. That's what we did.
Whipped foods.
Yeah, none of us were
Whipped
exactly
foods.
gonna go jump out of a plane or anything. So.
Unless somebody says to me, this plane is going to crash into a fiery ball and you will die, I'm never jumping out of a plane. Not ever.
And mind you, we have a friend who has said if she makes it to her 90th birthday, she's taken up cocaine and skydiving.
Because those are two things her higher self,
sensible brain.
her sensible brain has told her that's a no-go.
Yeah.
No
Right.
matter how much she may want to.
Is that Coyote?
Rhonda.
Oh, Rhonda. Yeah, truly. I really, at 90, becoming a meth addict, that might be excellent.
So yeah, air.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Tell us about air.
It's ideas and language and communication.
Inspiration.
Inspiration, travel, all of those new things, new ideas.
Would you say emotions?
No.
No.
No, that's fire.
No.
No.
No, okay, never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, air is, it's very interesting. With air, you cannot see air. You can see water, you can see fire, you can see earth.
Unless
you
air
can,
wants you to see it.
you can see the result of air,
You
Yeah.
can feel the effects.
effects of air, but you cannot see air. There's no way to see air. Now, traditionally, air is the color yellow, and it is associated with spring. And yeah, ideas. There was something else. The spring, yellow, and the mind. The mind.
The intellect, study.
The intellect,
yes.
yeah. Everything begins with the air element, because even if it's like, oh, I think I'm going to go to the loo, you think you're going to go to the loo. Thought comes before you do just about anything.
And then you go put something into the earth.
There we are.
There you go.
There we go.
Air itself, you were saying you can't see it, but you can feel its effects. I'm pretty sure, and I'm happy to be corrected, but compared to the other elements, you can manipulate air. Air can be dense, it can be heavy, it can be compressed to do work.
But it's
Put it into a bigger room and it gets diffuse. So magically, keeping those things in mind, you can use it for very different purposes.
You can, but you still can't see it.
No, I remember working at Little Mysteries. Quite often it would be students coming in looking for something to help them with schoolwork or studying or something. And it was always, you want to go with air, the element of, the east, and different stones for studying, or a blue candle. Rosemary as an herb, I believe. Isn't that the
Rosemary. Rosemary is also the universal herb. You can use it for anything. Anything at all. Any substitution, any element.
But I think it was one that, I guess in ancient times, philosophers would often wear a crown of rosemary to help.
Think.
Remember
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, it is in an essential oil. It is very stimulating.
In Druidry, the tree is associated with air?
Yeah, so we're back to the earth, well, fire, and tree,
Yeah.
and the tree represents, I guess in this case, would be earth and air.
Air, yeah.
Because it's connecting those two. In our ritual, we give praise to the Sky Father, which would be, I guess, a representation of wind, but it's not quite the same. Yeah, this is very much like witchcraft area.
Right, yeah. But yeah, new ideas, new communication, I find. Like it's direct communication, concise communication, speech, how to put your ideas accurately into words. I know at work, if I'm training a new staff member, I have to often say, if you're not understanding what I'm trying to explain to you, I'm perfectly okay if you let me know. because I think I'm explaining the 80-page thesis in my head in 4 sentences.
Right.
So that's a really difficult transition to make when you're trying to explain something concisely to someone.
Right.
So,
Get out the yellow candle.
yes.
Light her up quick.
So in the previous episode, we mentioned that Earth was pentacles in the tarot. What is it? What is air? Is it sword?
It depends on the system you use, but the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is probably used most, or derivatives of it, and it would be swords in that deck. Yeah, and
so,
I think that sharp edge of the sword is good for critical thinking.
Yeah.
Right.
Cutting through the bullshit.
Yeah.
So we also mentioned that Earth was very feminine, where wind is masculine.
Air is a masculine sign.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in an abstract sense, air can be about truth, things like that.
Yeah, that's part of communicating, I guess, too.
Yeah.
Or revealing, because when you're doing critical thinking, you're revealing other sides of things. Air is I'm very partial to air, but I have a lot of air in my chart. And there are very interestingly, over the years I've been paying attention, a lot of people will often say, I don't like it when it's windy. They find it nerve-wracking, or it makes them angry, or this or that. And I always I always pay attention to, when were you born?
Do you find a correlation?
I do. Believe it or not, my mother hates it when the wind is blowing. She says it just makes me mad. Well, she's Scorpio. And the water churns, or fire signs, especially when the wind is going, they get very wound up. Where me, I find the wind very soothing. A lot of people don't. It agitates them in some way, and I find there has been a correlation.
So Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. Those are your signs. Be aware. Be aware.
Earth probably okay, but I have found that a higher proportion of fire and or water signs, especially the fire signs, the air makes them tense.
Yeah.
The other thing we discussed, Earth was winter. What's wind?
Spring.
Spring.
Yeah.
Spring.
Yeah.
Spring. Earth is air is spring when the warmer winds start to blow.
Right.
The warmer winds start to blow. And usually in spring, people are coming out of that winter thing, and they're getting new ideas and new things they want to do, and they want to start things over,
Even
new
in
stuff.
a very practical sense, people, they just can't wait and often do it too soon. But in the moment it feels good, but they open up their houses.
Yeah, open windows.
For that
That's
early spring breeze, because that just blows all that stagnant, earthbound, wintry air out.
Again, the idea of hanging out your laundry to dry outside, and that fresh air smell that's in your bed sheets, and that kind of thing.
Yes, that's wonderful indeed. Now, oddly enough, last winter I was putting them out. If there was no snow outside on the rail, I was still putting it out. I didn't care if it came in hard. But I only just started doing that. Usually it is the spring.
Yeah, depression softens up after it's inside. When we were homesteading, our laundry was always outside in the winter, and then bring it in stiff as a board, hang it around the fire, and it would
be fine.
Be fine, because there's nothing more drying than winter air.
Well, it's very surprising. I found it surprising that I'd bring things in and they were hard, and when they softened up, they weren't wet. They were dry. It was very, because you think of something frozen, when it thaws out, it's going to be wet, melting. It was an interesting little. I'm sure there's a chemical thing behind, chemistry or whatever behind it. I'm not that clever about that sort of thing.
So one thing I was thinking, and I didn't think about it in time to bring it up in our Earth episode, but kind of riffing off one of the things that you have suggested in the past for people, like sort of disassociation exercises, but it's a good way of orienting yourself in your environment. If you want to get comfortable with the elements or using the elements in your spiritual practice, find yourself a place outside if you can, if weather allows, and encounter them individually, and go through all of your senses. What do I feel? What do I smell? What do I taste? those sorts of things. And with air, it's very subtle. It's very often subtle, but if you really stretch, and again, if you're smelling something on the air.
On the
it's
air,
carrying
yes.
something to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing's better than, when the lilacs are out and you're walking about and you smell that. That's very comforting. But it's on the air. You're right. Or a lot of times, and I enjoy it. Some people don't enjoy it. But when it's windy, stand out like the starfish and let the wind just, take away anything that you might you might feel that is clinging to you, which is good. We could use a little bit of air lately. Well, actually, it's blowing now because it's been insufferably hot.
Right. Well, this week is supposed to be all rain, so.
Yeah, things are changing.
Yeah, things are going to change quite quickly. My weather app is up.
Well, it's very interesting that today I noticed when I was out on my deck with my laundry that there's a poplar tree that's been dropping yellow leaves all over the backyard. And the acorns are falling like crazy. I'm like, we better not have an early winter. I want it still to be hot and warm.
We had a late spring, and our gardens are behind, I find. So.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Well, it's been a weird growing year.
It
But
has.
back to the air. It has been a peculiar growing year. My garden's doing horribly. But anyway, you can use divination even with each of the elements. And air, watch the leaves. Sometimes stare at a tree. It was kind of like staring at the fire. What do you see in the leaves? Watch the clouds float by. The air and it's that and all that association. It's very easy to get inspiration or divination, get messages that way. If
What
you're
about
interested.
tools for air?
It's a wand and athame, isn't it?
No.
Athame would be good. A knife as a sword substitute.
Oh, now I associate that with fire because metal is forged in fire.
That's the Crowley reasoning
Is
for
it?
the way they have swords.
Oh,
as
isn't that
south
interesting?
and wands. It's
Incense for sure.
and feathers and
Incense.
incense and
Smudge.
that kind of, yes, any kind of thing like that. Or you can also look up your crystals associated.
yeah.
We've done fanning as well.
Fanning?
Fanning, with the fans you can buy at your Asian market or those sandalwood wooden fans.
Yes.
And do fanning to fan away whatever's clinging to you and hanging on to you. That's a very air.
Clearing your energetic field.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Very
popular.
airy. That is a good way too. You can use air to ground because when you're allowing the air to wash, cleanse your energetic field, then you feel more settled. You can use the air to ground as well, which is very nifty. But I'm partial to air, even though I look crummy and yellow.
I think it's kind of funny that we were focused on how invisible air was, but yet the color yellow is very hard to miss.
You're right. I never thought about that. The yellow, I think it's a light color. I don't know why.
I think of it as a soft yellow. Sometimes it's a soft blue or silver too. Sometimes,
Silver.
isn't it? Yeah. Again, look and see. There's lots of correspondences online coming from different systems, and see what appeals when you're working with elements.
When I call the quarters, I tend to, a lot of people here in Nova Scotia switch east and west, but I tend to use the global direction thing. And when I call a quarter, because I think of the east, I think I will see a desert and the sand swirling. I will see this, and I will actually, in my mind, I will, hear some of that sort of Eastern music will even come to my mind when I think of air. Where when I think of the north, it's usually snow and ice in a mountain, more than the green earth, a northern mountain with snow on it is what I see. But the air, that's what I visualize in my mind.
Right.
That's just me.
Yeah.
Everybody's different. That's another thing. If when you're calling, allow your mind, when you're calling your quarter and calling your east, open up your mind. What do you see? And it may be different every time, or you may have that association. You think of, for me, the east and the air is the warm winds coming in spring, or the heat, that desert swirling sand of heat. That's what I think of that more.
So another strange association, because in the last episode we talked about ice was more earth and water. What about storms? Are storms more wind and water?
Depends, I think. Is this a storm on the prairies, or is this a storm in Nova Scotia?
Storm's a storm.
Yeah, but in the prairies you might get a tornado, where here you might get really bad
Well,
surf.
we're going to get hurricanes here.
Yeah, hurricanes. We get hurricanes here. That usually involves bad surf,
Yeah.
especially here on the, that's very watery.
But that does lead to some things. For instance, I would think of fog as being airy water, but I would think of a rainbow as being watery air.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
right.
get that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to be thinking about that all those different associations. Now you've given me a whole new thing to occupy my day with.
And then once you kind of make those associations, then you think, now what does this mean for me? How can I use this? How is this helpful going forward? But yeah, it is an interesting way to try and subdivide.
And when you're
look at things.
starting out, it can be nerve-wracking and frightening to call your first quarter.
Yes.
And in that situation, certainly do some research, figure out what you want to say, and maybe even write yourself some lines and memorize them. And once you get a little more comfortable in calling quarters, you can let go of that and allow your intuition and open your mind and open your heart and see what comes for calling quarters.
Within the moment.
Yeah, like I don't pre-prepare anything unless we're doing something public that's a little more theatrical. But for small group work or individual work, I don't have anything like in my mind by rote. I always just wait to see what in that moment is going to come.
Yep. No, I get that. And even say we know you're doing a circle for a specific purpose.
Yeah.
What part of that element is associated with your specific purpose? You might want to draw a little extra on that sort of idea.
Right. I wish my brain worked that way. I wish I could just come up with stuff. Maybe I just need a bit more air blown up.
Allow your head to open up and let it go in one ear and out the other. Let the air.
Resistance. I don't get it.
I was speaking of blowing up. I was just listening to a YouTube fellow that I follow that does Proto-Indo-European stuff. He was talking about some myths where men originated from the gods' flatulence, air coming down from the gods, and literally in the translation saying from the back end of the god. And sometimes, Brian, you often say this world is a steaming pile of shit.
Yeah.
And the idea that possibly we have come from that.
Maybe it's a little bit more
Accurate than
Shithead, really?
So yes.
I was going to ask, is this the guy on YouTube that has the little cartoons with the...
No, I'm always
There's some really
cartoons.
good ones. I'll find it.
Yeah, no, this is...
So that's our little discussion, or our big discussion on air. And certainly do your own research. I'm an old-fashioned girl. There's books to be had too if you like to have a book, on the elements. There's plenty to be found out there. And anything I would have originally read, I'm sure, is long out of print. So
I know of a couple that have recently been published. So 4 Elements of the Wise by Ivo Dominguez Jr. just in the last 5-6 years, and a whole book basically set up around recognizing and developing a relationship with elements, that sort of thing. So that would be a good one.
is Scott Cunningham's Earth, Air, Fire, and Water still?
It's
everything.
around.
Cunningham's still in print.
Oh, good.
Always.
That's a great
always...
place to start, too,
Yeah.
if you're looking into starting. And thank you all very much for joining us. And just to let you know before we go, that on the 14th of October, I'm going to be doing a little follow-up to our 4-parter on CKDU, The Witching Hour, and it's going to be elemental correspondences and also remedies for elemental deficiencies. So that is on CKDU 88.1 FM in Halifax and ckdu.ca around the world. And I'd like to thank you. And again, as we often say, if you have ideas or comments or anything like that, you can certainly contact us on our Facebook page. We are always looking for new ideas.
Three Witches and a Druid podcast would like to take a moment to say thank you to our generous and amazing Patreons. Today, we thank Rose, East Coast Witch, Karen, Mac, Highland Horde, Dave the Wave, Danny, Tanya, Maria, Sarah Pecora, Kay Licious, Linda Hume Leahy, and Jennifer Hartman. Without your generous contributions, we could not bring you such magical content, and we thank you for listening.
And so until next time, everyone, merry meet,
Merry part,
and merry meet again.
blessed
be.
This has been Three Witches and a Druid podcast. Thanks for listening.